Okay, back to the Lego. We go back to our regularly scheduled programming after the rude interruption that was that last video. I had wanted to talk about this stuff, and somehow I went on something completely different. So this was also something in the brick bar. 2 of these. Thank you, Jamie. Fantastic. I also, then I don't think I showed you this, the gray 1x2 of black stripes, which is in my collection kind of rare because of course I refurbished or reconstituted like 15 or 17 689s. And if I look at my gray bin, which is right there, bring that down for a sec. I have a stack of 1x4s. Some are pretty faded, and I have, oh, there is one here. It's a little colored, little yellowed, and that's, let's see, this is another 1x2. Ooh, look at those top two. Ooh. I always get impressed when I can find these original bricks and they look that good. I might have to find some of my mobile tracking station. No, it won't be, that may be mobile tracking stations too, but the mobile lab, and see how those look in there, because I think I had a couple mobile labs that had really crappy ones. So having this guy, I'm gonna add him to the list. There we go. And you can see this is the new one I just got from Jamie, and you can see there's a huge color difference between these two. Yay! This will go in here. Oops. That'll go in here. This, I'm gonna see, I don't know if I actually replaced my 6940, the Alien Stalker, moon-based stalker, I can't remember what it's called. The Gray Walker, the AT-AT. I think I might need that piece on that thing. And I can't remember Explorians, UFOs, whatever goes in there. Okay, so that's a gray, and that'll just go in my round bin. But what I really came here to talk to you about, you can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant. There's, not to go off on yet another tangent, there's a clip by Arlo where it was years after, like decades after the fact of Alice's Restaurant, after he wrote Alice's Restaurant. I think it was, I just heard the audio, so I'm not sure if it was in front of a live audience or whatever, but this is decades after the fact, and he's doing Alice's Restaurant, which is, to me, one of the best things ever written. I used to know the whole thing by heart, but I won't sing it to you because it's 18 minutes of boring. But he's standing in front of this crowd. I'm just picturing this because, again, all I say here is the audio. I think I heard the radio one time. And he's talking about the song, because it came out in the 60s. It was kind of like an anti-war, anti-whatever, but it's still a fun song. And he's talking about, and then he starts talking about Richard Nixon, who was the president at the time. And he starts talking about Watergate-ish, but not Watergate as it is. He starts talking about the 18 minutes of tape that was erased. And he's saying, because he wrote this song that was anti-war and sort of anti-establishment, whatever. And he was inferring in his little storytelling that the 18 minutes of missing tape was Nixon listening to Alice's Restaurant. Which I thought, now, I am not anti-war, by the way. I'm not pro-war, but I'm not anti-military. It's just really, really quick. I'm a person who believes that sometimes you have to stand up to the bully. I am a appreciator of Churchill with all his many flaws. I'm an appreciator of people who stand up. Schwarzkopf, I appreciate people who say this far, no further. People who don't cross the line, but people who stand up, then stand up to the bully and protect the people. But anyway, that's all I'm gonna say about that, because we don't need to talk about it anymore. So, I had 2, 4, so there's 2, 4, 6, 8. I have 8 of these, so there's 8 of those. I have 4 more of those. So that means I have a layer and a half, because I need 8 per layer. I don't have any more over there. So this is the issue. This is the issue, and with all seriousness, this was the easiest piece that I could grab out of the boxes. The biggest piece is the easiest piece I can grab out of the boxes. And a lot of people, you know, sick of seeing this diamond. But this is the issue. So I'll show it to you so I can like zoom in. So let me get this thing out of the way so I can do this without breaking this thing, because I have a show and I love that sound. That's not good. Something I have to fix. So this rectangle that's missing corners is the setup that I, after months of this back in 2010, going from the winter train show to the very first Brick Vet, which is where the actual tower got built. This is after Brick World Chicago, and that was, I think, in the summer, and then I think we did a fall show, and then I can't remember. I think Brick Vet was definitely after Brick World Chicago. But anyway, so what happens here is that after trials and tribulations and working at it and changing and blah blah blah, I finally decided on this square setup to be the central pillar of the entire tower, because it was easy enough to, let's borrow this over here. It was easy enough to fake whatever I wanted to fake and add these as elevator towers in the corners here. So that worked out fine, and strong enough that I could use 2x bricks, lots of 2x bricks, and lots of 2x slopes and inverted slopes. So you can get these, let me just pop this window off. So you can get this little angle here on the inside. Because again, I do tend to try to make my mocks in universe like they're livable. So the inside is not completely fleshed out, even though I keep on saying I'm going to, but some of my interiors are completely fleshed out. I just haven't put any, you know, facilities like washrooms anywhere in the layout. But I at a minifig level, on the minifig scale, I wanted the inside to be habitable. I will also say on this specific instance, and nobody outside of my general living area, nobody will get this, but I also have a massively huge appreciation of Hamilton Place in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My friend Ian called it Brutalisque. The architecture type is called Brutalisque. I didn't even know that was the name for it, but I remember when they opened Hamilton Place. I remember being there when I was like in single digits, like very young single digits. My parents would take me there. School would take us there once in a while. I saw Beatlemania there like 1976. I was like 9. So we've seen so many things in Hamilton Place. They don't call it Hamilton Place anymore, but again, just like Sky Dome, I will never stop calling it Hamilton Place. I don't give a flying fig whatever the First Ontario wants to call it. It's always going to be Hamilton Place. But anyway, so this is kind of a homage to Hamilton Place. So this tower has lots of homages to a whole bunch of stuff, including Empire Strikes Back, 2001: Space Odyssey, and the CN Tower. So I tried to incorporate all that stuff. Anywho, so let me just go tilt it down again. You can see this top, and you can see here, it's 3 studs out. This is a 3-stud void on the corners on the outside. And I did that specifically. Where did I put it? Did I put it back? No, I put it on top. I did that specifically, and I forgot that I did this, by the way, and I didn't remember I did this until I put the tower back together at Jamie's shop, or when I put this guy here in the tower on the weekend, because I only made those 2 wide, and I'll show you that in a sec. So I did that specifically so when you put this piece on, you can see, let me just turn it this way, you can see just 1 stud proud of the front facade here, 1 stud proud. And I wanted that, and I didn't want to do 2 studs proud, like half and half, because then this circle, it's right on the 90-degree angle, so you don't get, I didn't think it was going to look nearly as nice as then having the 1 stud out proud of the front facade. Let me just get that down there. So you can see it's looking across. Anyway, So I remember specifically when I was designing this thing like 100 years ago, that after changing and changing and changing, that I settled on this because of this. Because there's no other reason to have these little corners here at all besides putting the elevators. Because again, I thought this tower needed elevators because again, in universe, the minifigs have to move around. They have to get from level to level. And I didn't want like a transporter beam or whatever. We're not advanced enough for that. So I thought it needed elevators, and I was going to use the trans dark blue because again, these pieces came in the Space Police 3 sets. So I got lots of those. And the shorter ones, the 5 high ones, they came in the Explorians. So I wanted to use those. Again, to have those pieces in here because again, Explorians and Space Police 3, you know, not bad. So I wanted these pieces in here, but I also didn't want them to be overwhelming the trans yellow. I wanted trans blue to be in here because trans blue is an original classic space color on some of the sets. Not the original 3-digit sets, but right after the Galaxy Commander was trans dark blue, and a whole bunch of other sets were trans dark blue. I wanted trans dark blue to be in the layout, but I didn't want it to be a huge part of the layout because I wanted the layout to mostly look like trans yellow because trans yellow is cool. Anyway, so this was designed purposely for these. This because I could have just brought the corners together and go straight up without any thought of this, and then it would look more like the CN Tower ish. But then again, also the CN Tower has elevators going up and down. So anyway, so I did that. So, but again, when I started this guy, this is like 2010. So 14 years ago, and I hadn't put much thought into it after the entire tower was designed. I took it apart numerous times to wire it, fix it, make it better, blah blah blah. But again, I was just taking it apart and putting it back together exactly the same as it, except making, you know, reinforcing stuff. So, and for the longest time, I haven't had to take it apart at all. It hasn't been busted, it hasn't been broken because the wooden boxes, thanks for wooden boxes, that I've never had to really repair the actual tower. I've had to repair the landing pads a few times because they've fallen, I dropped them, whatever, and they smash. And but the actual little tower itself, from top to bottom, except for the cake topper, which is a whole other story that I'm going to get into later, not in this video. But the tower has been exemplarily fine, going up, going down, going to storage, but in the layout, it's been perfect. So I hadn't had to think about how I designed this thing back in 2010 until I showed up at Jamie's shop on Sunday to take it down. But before I did that, I put this in there thinking that this is exactly how I designed it. Because you say, oh, it looks so much the same, but it doesn't. It really doesn't, because these are 2 studs wide instead of 3 studs wide. And oh, what's a stud? It's a huge thing, and I'll show you. It's a huge difference because this is exactly where it's gonna go. Oh, I have to pull it more because I don't have enough room. This diamond is just not the latest thing in the world. So if I line it up there, and I line it up there, missing that piece that I found earlier, wherever I put it. There it is. So that goes right there. So, come on. I don't know if you can see that, but this facade here is 1 stud back from this facade. They don't line up. It's because there's 1 stud difference, and that's all the way around. So it's basically 2 studs. It has to be 2 studs wider. Now, where the windows are, again, it's 1 stud back here. It's not level with this guy. Now, I can't tilt it to show you, but this is 1 stud farther into the tower than this guy. So that's a step there. So now I have to move that whole thing out on both ways. The only good thing is that what I did get right, thankfully, because it was really easy to get this part right, is that because these windows are 8 studs, and then the 2x2 slopes on each side is exactly the same as up here. So the width here worked out perfectly well, but I forgot that this has to come out 3 studs and not 2 studs. So I'm gonna be working on that. And while I'm doing that, put that back down here. Don't drop that, by the way. There's Technic beams going this way and this way, but none this way. So that whole thing is just bricks on top of bricks. Now, I won't do it anymore, but there was one point where I put this thing on a flat level floor and I stood on the top of it because it is structurally sound all the way through down to the bottom. There is a structural element from this level all the way down to the bottom so you can stand on top of it. But I wouldn't recommend it. So, whatever. So I'm going to take this whole thing apart. But while I was thinking about, I have to take it apart to fix it, move everything out on both sides. I thought the other thing that I didn't like is I was just looking at the pictures from Sunday when it was in there, is that, that's busted. Anyway, that this little tiny slope here that I got going on here, you can see the little tiny slope here, right? Coming down. You don't really notice it when it's in the big tower. Like you look at this slope, you can see, look how big that slope is. And the slope from the bottom, you see how slope on the base of the tower, because it's basically the same as the top. It's exactly the same slope as here. You can see it. This one, when it's inside, when it's in the structure of the tower, you don't see this little slope. Now, I also think it's because it's too wide instead of, I mean, it's 2 studs out instead of 3 studs, that these things are blocking it from view. And so I was thinking, but maybe, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4 of these windows high, that instead of just using 1, I would use 2, which would mean that it's coming out to here, right? And I think maybe, perhaps, oops, so you can't see it, perhaps you would see that. That might be, because that's exactly where it would be, out to there. And I thought then you would see the slope of the windows. Because again, I like the idea, it comes up from the base, goes straight, comes out for this little thing here, goes straight, and then cut back in. So it's basically, it's a whole bunch of diamonds stacked on top of each other. Bigger diamond, smaller diamonds, biggest diamond. I was thinking that might look better, but then I also looked at the picture and I realized at this point of the tower evolution, the tower with this thing in it just as it is over 6 feet tall. From the base plate to the top, it's over 6 feet tall, which means it's taller than me. so it is like, how much more taller do I want to make this thing? Now, I have seen somebody did a complete take on my tower. I think it's from Italy. I saw some pictures a few years back. They made their own version of the tower, but it's remarkably very, very similar with the landing pads and everything else. But they made it very, very spaced out. So you got the base, and then you got the landing pads way above it, and then the top of the observation deck way above that. I think that was like 7 or 8 feet tall by the looks of it in the picture. I could be wrong. I didn't get a measuring tape with Italy. But I'm weighing the pros and cons of making the tower taller, because I don't know how much taller I want to make it. If I just do this by itself, it doesn't look like it'll be that much taller. But again, you have to go to the top of the window, and then you have to put a couple more bricks on top of that to make a nice solid platform for this thing to lay on, for that thing to sit on. So I'm gonna be, and I'm also short windows. I'm short 4 windows, which is fine, because I will use temporarily, I'll just use gray ones for now and then go with bricklink order. I almost ordered some the other day, but I stopped because I didn't know what I was gonna do. But after looking at this, I'm thinking right now, that is a better idea. I really do think that's a better idea. So I might work on that, and I'll keep you posted. I think that was it. Hey, all about Lego, almost. I will also say, this thing by itself, it's fine. When it's in the tower, it's awesome. I have no problem. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I do honestly. I said this to people when I was taking down the layout at Jamie's store on Sunday. I've said this before, and I'm not above saying it again. I don't get to see this thing set up at home. I had 2 driveway shows, one during COVID and one during the lighting, and wanted to make sure all the lighting was working before I did Bricks in the 6. And I did one in the living room, which took up the entire living room, basically. I had to like move furniture so I could set up in the living room. So I keep on saying this to people. There is no space for me to set this thing up at home. There isn't. And so the only time I get to see it together is at a show. And I told Jamie this, hopefully clearly. I said to Jamie, anytime he wants me to come over and set this thing up at his store, I'm 100% in. Like there will be no hesitation. because I love seeing it set up. I get excited to see it set up. I get excited to see the trains moving. I get to see all the classic space that's in it. I'm a fanboy, and it's my own layout, but I'm a fanboy because I love classic space. I really do. It's not, I talk about other stuff, but it is, and it's not the layout in and of itself, because again, the layout over the years has been blown my mind with when I'm doing it with Jeff and everything like that. It's not just the layout; it's the people's appreciation and enthusiasm of it that I've had over the years that really make me happy that I actually built it, because again, I love other people's enthusiasm, and it's not because they're enthusiastic about the layout itself, although I'm going to appreciate that, because who wouldn't, but I try not to let it go to my ego, but I also know, just even from Sunday when I was there for 3 or 4 hours taking it down, that people were coming into the store and, oh, it's coming down, sad. But, I said bricks and sticks and blah, 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 in November, absolutely be there, because it's going to be there with a whole bunch of other better stuff. But they talked to me about their appreciation of not just Lego in its entirety, because again, I really do appreciate this hobby, but specifically because of this, the classic space stuff. They talked about it. And I have you guys on my YouTube's, or mostly classic space fans, because that's basically what I've been doing all these years for Lego. I haven't done much else besides classic space and some Technic, but the people that I get to talk to because of the layout, and this is why I continue to show it. This is why I continue to look for places to show it, because every single show, I can't remember, I'm sure I probably talked about it, but I cannot remember. The only one bad experience that really sticks in my mind is the mother and her child, the 4-year-old that was just trashing it, and the mom wasn't doing anything about it. But that's the exception to all the years and all the shows, which again, I can't even tally up now. It's got to be almost, probably even more than 100 shows over the years where I've done shows, and I loved there's not a single show that I've ever done. Even the time I had my emergency gallbladder surgery, when I was in Barrie doing a show, that show was fantastic. It's called Brick Awesome, and it was awesome. So what happened afterwards, not so much. But I said to my friend Callum, we were talking at dinner the other day, I said, honestly, one of the main reasons why I keep this thing around and keep on wanting to show it is because of the people and the enthusiasm. And again, we start talking about this, and it always eventually, if they stick around long enough and their kids aren't dragging them over somewhere else, they talk about all the stuff they loved as a kid and all the stuff that they wanted to do. And I even heard, this was a really nice compliment yesterday Sunday. It was mentioned to me that seeing something like this, and again, basic brick, I keep on mentioning that, 98% of the entire layout is basic brick. Trans yellow basic brick, but basic lots of trans yellow. But there isn't too much fancy. There isn't too much new. There's hardly any new. So it's all the basic pieces that we got in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and 90s. But what it shows people, especially these days, because Legos, and this, I wasn't going to talk about this, but let's talk about this at the 23-minute mark. I have no personal beef and or lack of appreciation of the Lego company. I have no beef with them. Yes, I have a letter right over there from the legal department from 1986, but whatever, 1987. I don't care. I have nothing but appreciation and respect, and I'm gonna say, I'll be a fanboy, some adoration of the Lego company. Do I think they made missteps for my perspective? Absolutely. Dumping 9-volt rail, but they made it for business decision. Talked about it before, so I don't have to talk about it again. But they did stuff. They changed the color. They did stuff that people, and I get it. I was, whatever, but whatever. I talked about in my last video, but nothing in my entire life will, at this point, will make me dislike Lego company. Like nothing. They'd have to do something pretty bad for me to say, oh, I hate you and I'm gonna sell all my stuff. Gonna shake my fist in the general direction of Denmark. So, but I'm also not that fanboy for all the new stuff. That's good stuff. It's good quality stuff. Blah blah blah. And they're mass producing all these fantastic sets. That Jamie has had a whole store. So if you guys want to shop for Christmas or you want to go to Jamie's store right now, he's got tons of stuff. All new sets, all fantastic stuff. The brick bar is fantastic. So the Lego still is not disappointing me at all. I'm stuck in the past, and that's perfectly acceptable, and they don't care, and I don't care. But this was going somewhere. My appreciation is my appreciation really does know no bounds for the company. I mean, I don't adore it. I don't obsess over it. That's not who I've ever been. I don't obsess over things. I love Star Trek, but I'm not a hardcore do or die, to come to the end of time. And but again, people whose passions lead them in that direction, I hope they balance themselves out and not like become infatuated to the point where they're doing bad stuff. And again, I remember there was a movie years ago. I think it was made for TV, and I think it starred Tom Hanks. It's called Mazes and Monsters, and it came out, I want to say the late 70s, but I think it was the early 80s. Mazes and Monsters, where the obsession, and it was Dungeons and Dragons, but they couldn't call it that, but the obsession of Dungeons and Dragons, he lost sight of reality. And to me, that's something I was very, very cognizant of, even back then. That my appreciation of Star Trek, which I had at the time, my appreciation of Lego was, I didn't even know that I had this massive appreciation of Lego. I just played with it all the time. It never dawned on me that I'd be doing this when I'm 30 or 57. But the Mazes and Monsters was a movie made for TV, and I think it was Tom Hanks. It's been a million years since I've seen it. But it was his appreciation of Dungeons and Dragons that went too far, where he was stuck in that fantasy land. Now, we all know in our geek culture that there have been a bunch of movies made, like Galaxy Quest, where the kid's infatuation is the punchline and or part of the plot of, this is actually a true story. The monsters are real, the spaceships are real, whatever it is. And I love those movies too. But I always tried to temper my appreciation and adoration. Let's be perfectly frank, I do adore Lego, with my appreciation of reality and wanting to wake up tomorrow and have a nice wife and have a nice kid and have a nice job and have a nice set of friends. Because people can get lost. People can absolutely get lost in their infatuation of something, and you just can't turn on the news where somebody is stalking somebody. All that stuff, all that crazy, stupid stuff, where somebody themselves has lost connectivity to reality and how they interact with other people. They think that they don't see how they're impacting on others. They don't. They think what they're doing is good. And that leads to bad consequences and bad suffering. But anyway, don't have to go off in that tangent too much. I think it's all self-explanatory. But for me, this thing does fill a niche of creativity. It fills a niche of technology. It fills a niche for me of, I won't say time wasting, but it does fill a niche of a hobby where I can spend 5 minutes or 50 minutes or 5 hours or however long I need to play and build and recreate and rebuild. And I do like that about this hobby. But my favorite part of the hobby, and I think that's where I was going to, is seeing the joy and talking about the joy of this hobby and sometimes other hobbies with other people and seeing their passion for what they're passionate about. So that's the final wrap up of this. I mentioned it numerous times. I do love other people's passion. I got to sit down with one of my very good friends from back in high school days, who went off and did fantastically big things and smart things and a lot of stuff. Possibly to this day, the smartest person I personally know. and I've told him that. But he's also one of my best friends. And but I hadn't seen him in a while because he's doing educational post PhD stuff somewhere in the world. But he came home for stuff, and he said, let's go for a coffee. So a bunch of us, 3 of us, piled in, all friends, went out there, and I got to see him, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and we got to talk, and I was just riveted, because I hadn't seen him in a while, first of all, friend I haven't seen in a while, riveted to his stories, riveted to what he's been doing with his life, and I don't have a clue. He's got doctorates, he's got PhDs, he's got like a whole bunch of stuff. He's the smartest guy I know. And yet I'm sitting there, and he's telling us stories and whatever, and life, universe, and everything, and appreciating a lot of stories about our past together, and hanging out and making all these crazy things as you did when you're 19, 20. But I wanted to be there to see his energy, and he still had the same energy he had when we were 19 about stuff. And I love that. It's one of my favorite things about my friend, is his passion for stuff, including us. He was passionate about us. He wanted to catch up on all of us. I was a kid. We're all kids now. We all have kids. We're all married, and how's the life going? Because he moved away and whatever. So he was as passionate about our lives as we were about his. And I love that. I love shared passion, and I love spending time with people who want to talk about what they want to talk about, and that when they're passionate about something, I really, really do love that. And this thing, for all its many faults, and nobody has to know about the faults besides me, it has lots of faults. It requires lots of babysitting. That's one of its faults. Opens that door. Like, if I had showed up with like nothing, I can still go to these shows. A lot of people go to these shows with nothing, and that's perfectly acceptable, and just hang out for the weekend. But I have this, and and I mentioned this before at the last Bricks in the 6, and I was kind of in the center of the room-ish, and the entrance door's way over there, and we were getting ready for opening on the public days on Saturday, and I was making sure everything was working, which again, babysitting, and the doors opened, and the people came in, and again, this thing, because of the base, is well over 6 feet tall. I'm talking about the tower now is from the base plates, but off the floor it's about 30 inches off the floor, because the boxes are 22 inches and the rails are about 6-8 inches. So it's pretty tall. You can see it across the room, which is, you can see it. you can look in the room, and I don't care if you're all 6'5". It doesn't matter. You can still see the layout because it's taller than you. So anyway, so I'm standing there tinkering in the layout, and I look up, and the door's open, and the people are coming in, and I just, again, I don't know how it happened, the serendipity and whatever. I look up, and this guy comes in, and he's got this like lighthouse periscope, whatever, looking around the room, and he sees the tower, and he just comes parting the crowds like the Red Sea. He wasn't doing that. I was adding that as the story, but he comes straight over. He says, "Dave, I've been looking forward to seeing this for ages. I've been watching all your videos, and I wanted to see it, and blah blah blah." And we talked for an hour. We talked not just about the layout, because again, after 5 minutes you're bored of it. But we talked about everything, the Lego and the growing up and whatever, and we had a wonderful conversation. It was absolutely adorable for me. And the fact that I got to experience that, the second the door opens, well, I looked up, and all of a sudden, boom, and it's like, wow, this is like, I feel joyous by being with other people who have joy. And it's been my entire life. I like hanging around fun people, happy people, but I also love just their enthusiasm for whatever they're enthusiastic about. I mentioned my cousin Rick numerous times, and his enthusiasm for his car stuff and other people. My dad in his canoe, like, I loved helping him with his canoe when I was a kid, and blah blah. And my dad's love for scuba diving got me to, not necessarily because of his love, but I've loved scuba diving my entire life. I love other people's passion. Even if whatever they're passionate about, I really couldn't even remotely care about in my regular life. But if I'm talking to somebody and they're passionate about something, I'll sit there for a day and let them talk to me about whatever they're passionate about, because I love that. And this is why this thing, over and above everything else that it does for people, because people keep on telling me it's awesome. I keep on thinking I've seen so many better, but this isn't self-effacing at all. To go off on this quick tangent, this isn't self-effacing at all. This is a nice layout. I mean, I'm gonna say it. It's nice. It's good. It's actually not bad, but but it's a niche. It's a complete niche, just like everything else you build. The minifig scale destroyers that were at last year's BrickFest, by again a wonderful builder that I won't mention her name, but I was looking at that thing for so long because I love the details in it, and then Simon Liu and his new whatever, I can't remember the name of it. I always forget the name of it because I'm not good at pronouncing it. But he did the biggest one in Brick World Chicago, but he brought a lot of it here with all his friends, and it's a collab. And it was, you could just sit there for days and look at the details and never see everything. It's fantastic. The train layouts, absolutely the train layouts, and the trees and the landscaping and the trains and all the details. I love it. I used to do train shows back in the day, and that was always fun. So this fits into that. For me, looking at this in my old school way of doing things, I happen to respect other people's new way of doing things more because it's new, and it's like, ooh, it's new, and I'm just old school. I just have a lot of old school, so it just makes a big, so again, I don't want to be self-effacing. But anywho, I'm going to get back into building this thing. I don't think I'm going to make another video tonight. It's going to be late when I go to bed. But I do appreciate you. I do appreciate your appreciation of stuff, because if you're here, this isn't a channel for fly-by-nights. There was a movie called Quicksilver years ago, fly-by-nights, I think you guys said. People who are like need that quick fix in 30 seconds and go off and do something else because they got it. Like I drone on for 36 minutes. No, nobody who has that kind of attention span where they like the shorts is going to stick around for 36 minutes to hear me blather on for hours. So people who watch these videos want to watch these videos, which is exactly why I have like 1,000 subscribers after 15 years, and other people can join and they have 1.5 million in it overnight because they know how to feed the general audience. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you. I'm interested in talking about what I want to talk about for 35 minutes. And that's where my interest lies. And I'm glad you're here for it. So don't think I don't appreciate you. I really do appreciate everybody that's watching this video. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up because I want to get some work done in here to get some ideas to see what I'm going to like. So I will talk to everybody soon. And I'll see you on the flip side. Take care.